What's your thoughts on government cover-ups or covert societies attempting to control humanity? Do you believe in ancient astronauts, intergalactic communication, or extraterrestrial visitations? Ever had an experience with disembodied spirits or the paranormal universe? Are these subjects fact or fiction? Each week, Tony and Eddie explore these unbelievable realities and beyond. Exclusively on Truth Be Told.
Hello and welcome to Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie, where we believe in experience becomes truth. I am your host, Tony Sweet. Joining me now in studio is your other host, Eddie Connor, and world-renowned astrologer, Rachel Lang.
That's right, Tony. We have some questions for our audience. Number one, are you feeling like the world is going just a little bit crazy right now? Are your electronics going haywire? And do you feel like everybody around you is a little bit more irritated than normal? Getting on your nerves like you want to smack them upside their head?
Yes.
Well, if you are, it's because you're in Mercury Retrograde.
And our first guest is famed spiritual teacher and author Elizabeth Peru, explaining this meaning behind this particular Mercury Retrograde and how all of us can survive.
If we're lucky. So everybody, please put your hands together and welcome our famed Australian friend, Elizabeth Peru.
Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome. We're so excited to have you back on our show.
My pleasure to be here with you lovely gentlemen, and lovely to meet you, Rachel.
It's good to meet you too.
Well, listen, I love this portion where I can sit back, and I'm going to probably ask a few questions here and there, but I have two people that are in your genre, Eddie and Rachel. So I'm going to let Eddie go ahead and take the first question and go for it, Eddie, and I know we're going to have a great time.
Fantastic. So thank you for joining us. Seriously, Elizabeth, my first question is this. What is the biggest misconception about Mercury retrograde, and how can you help our fans from running out there screaming and sticking their head under a boulder?
Okay, because I love Mercury retrograde. Let's just start off by saying that.
It's my favorite.
Yeah. And I've always enjoyed it, actually. And, I would, even when I was a student of cosmology myself, I would read astrologers talking about Mercury retrograde like it was some dreaded event. And I used to think, but it's actually good for me because it helps me be clearer and speak clearer and express myself more clearly and open up. Whereas maybe when Mercury's not in retrograde, I might clam up a little bit more. And so the one thing I'll start by saying is this is the period of the year when we are more expressive and we are more open to speaking our truth. And that means the people around you are going to be more open to doing that as well. So we're not hiding our feelings as much. Everything's more out on the table. And the other great thing about this is you can discover what you have been missing in the past. So if there's any little bits of information from people or little pieces of the puzzle that weren't quite there, you'll find they come back to you. You'll find that people answer emails they haven't answered in 6 months. Or you'll have the conversations you've been wanting to have, and all of a sudden somebody pops into your life to have that conversation. So we get to close off unfinished business. And some people may not particularly always like that. They may fear what's going to be said, but it helps you become clear and keeps you on common ground with those around you. So the best thing for me about Mercury retrograde is clear and concise conversations and communication. And this particular Mercury retrograde, and I've had a feeling about this for a while, it's a very personal one. So whereas in the past a lot of the Mercury retrogrades are about working out your issues with other people, through other people, and using each other as mirrors as we do, this one's more about you. So it's your self-worth in particular. That's the key factor over the next 2.5 weeks. So we're going to be working on self-worth, and many other planetary factors are coming in to support that as well.
Boy, that opens up so many questions and that run through my mind, but I'll come up with some in a minute. But it makes sense.
Well, and Tony and I were speaking just before we all went live, and Tony, if you don't mind,
go ahead.
It is going to have a procedure, and it was a medical procedure inside of the retrograde. And
Yes.
I was talking to him. It got moved. It got moved out of it to another time, out of the retrograde. And I was like, Tony, that's the best time.
Because at first I said, I'm glad it moved, but you said.
Yeah, Tony was glad that it moved out of retrograde. But I personally feel that whenever we're in a retrograde, I take my car in, my Mitsubishi Altima, and I take it in to make sure they will find things during a retrograde they do not find when it's not a retrograde.
Absolutely.
And I think it's the same with medical procedures. Oh, wait, does that include Botox?
That Botox depends on where Venus is in your chart at that moment.
I want to ask you about my Venus thing.
Yeah. But no, I would agree with you, and I think for this one, Elizabeth, and you might you might be able to add to this, but this Mercury retrograde is happening in Virgo. And which is all about health and healing and going in and kind of fine tuning the body, the physical body. I mean, and Elizabeth, right before we started the show, you had kind of mentioned something about that as well.
Absolutely. And given as well, this Mercury retrograde is happening during the eclipse season too. That amplifies the cleansing and clearing that's happening at the moment. And this period we're in now is perfect for a physical overhaul, which we were just talking about. And so if you've been thinking about going back to the gym or starting a new diet or just exercising in general or clearing out your home or your new wardrobe or maybe getting a new haircut like I did recently, this is the perfect time for that because we're overhauling our self-image as well at the moment, as well as the physical. We're also looking at being more authentic. And during a Mercury retrograde and during the eclipses, this is the beautiful timing because you're going to, as we said, uncover things that you previously missed. You're going to be more precise, more detailed, more exacting. So if you normally overlook things like that, this is a period where you're not going to. You're actually going to drill down into the finer details of everything. So it's the perfect period to start a makeover for yourself.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask a question to all three of you. So Mercury retrograde to everyday people, some of people just now, they're like, oh, I don't even know what that is. But the people that have heard of it, they always think it's the same. So it sounds like you're saying that this Mercury retrograde in every single one is different from. So what about this one in particular? Why is it making it so different? Is there the moons and all that stuff? I can't tell you all this. So why is it different?
Well, there's a lot of factors at play that I feel, and I'm not an astrologer. Okay, I'm an intuitive, so I understand about planetary alignments, but I go into my soul and I ask. And when I ask about this one, I get that it's a very personal retrograde for people. And if I look at it from a planetary level, we've had an amazing year this year. We're in a 9 universal year for the planet. We are wrapping up the last decade of our life this year on a universal level, hence why we may see so much turmoil on the planet in 2016. People often have a hard time letting go of the past, and we are letting go of the past radically this year. We need to do that in order to prepare for a new decade, which is beginning in 2017. And so when we're doing this, when we're letting go of the past and we're preparing for the new, given that we're in the middle of the eclipse season as well, this Mercury retrograde is, should we say, it's amplified. The energy is amplified, meaning that all communication is amplified. And so I'd say this is a perfect period of the year to look at how you present yourself to the world and ask yourself, how authentic am I being? And I'm sure people are doing this within themselves. They're having this conversation quietly within themselves right now. You may find that you need to be on your own a little bit over the next 2 weeks or so. You may need to cocoon yourself off so you can hear your soul's voice as well. It's louder now than it has been in many months. And often when we're around too many social situations and whatnot, we can't hear that voice that's coming through and that wants to advise us, because your soul's your greatest advisor. It tells you everything. And when I say you, I talk about the personality, which I feel operates around the brain and the soul via the heart. And we can often feel like two beings, the personality being the one that gets us through our everyday and the soul being the infinite that knows everything about our path. And so through this Mercury retrograde, soul is calling to us and preparing us for this new decade of our life, which is just about to come in.
Well, Rachel, I was going to say you had some stuff.
I just want to confirm. So it's amazing, Elizabeth, that you don't know anything about astrology, because what's happening astrologically for us right now during this month is we have a lot of mutable energy. Jupiter is getting ready to move into a new sign, and that's the planet that relates to our spirituality, our faith, our sense of higher understanding. And as a result of this huge, I mean, this is like a 13-month influence that's getting ready to shift for us. Yeah. And with the eclipses, everything that we have right now, we also have a mutable square. So there's a lot of energy that's pushing us to make changes in our lives that aren't comfortable. And we might see this by situations like people leaving suddenly, or, there's been a lot of cancer. There's been a lot of loss. There's been a lot of shifting and changing in terms of health and our loved ones. And so I think what's happening for us is that things are we're breaking open our hearts so that we live more from that place. Because when your heart's broken open, you're so raw that everything that you do is motivated by, broken open by joy too. I mean, your heart can be broken open because you fall in love, but it's like we're all being sort of called to begin the process of taking action, which is why we need to clear out, clean up.
And this is a year too, and I said this back in January, where so many artistic souls, if it is their time to go, they are leaving the planet. And we have seen such a proliferation of deaths this year on celebrities in particular, and of course I'm sure people in their own life have seen it happen, but in a 9 universal year, we tend to see it's easier for people to let go and complete. And so this also buys into that same energy of what you've just been talking about too. And, with my understanding of the planets, I've always taught myself just to intuitively tune into them. And that's what I teach other people to do as well. And so it's interesting because I think we all have a personal relationship with the planets, and there can be specific understandings of what they mean. But I think when you tune into them yourself, you get a deeper awareness of how that planet relates to you. For like Jupiter, for me, is all about expansion, and everything's bigger than life as well. And whenever I feel that Jupiter energy within, I love that energy actually. It makes me feel more of my soul comes forward when I feel the Jupiter energy. So, and of course, action's everything this year too. If you don't act on what you're feeling, then you're letting yourself down. There's so much opportunity. This year from a planetary level. We're being so supported, and that's what I really want to get through to people, is that these alignments are here to help you, not hinder you, but help you.
Elizabeth, this is John here. Good to see you again.
Hi. How you going?
Good. What I've been feeling, and it's interesting that you brought up the point that your soul is louder now, because I've actually been feeling like my soul is screaming to make some changes now. And what I also feel has been happening has been like an incremental. There's been upgrades happening spiritually in increments. You know what I mean? So it's like we're like I guess I'll use the analogy of a phone. We get these upgrades on our phone, and then it makes it better, and so, but it happens in increments, and that's what's feeling that's been happening all year long. It's sort of like we're one upgrade to the next, because I know there's been a lot going on astrologically, and I'm just like, oh, another thing, and then, but now it really does feel like it's amplified big time.
Yeah, energetically as well.
Yeah.
So we are experiencing a lot of flux and a lot of change, and we have to be very flexible this year. Have you found that? Have you found that you'll start one day in a certain way, and it can chop and change radically throughout the day, and that's the unpredictability and that unknown factor is huge this year. We're all having to trust a lot more, and of course, that is the energy of the heart, is trust, whereas the head likes to control. So there's a little bit of a difference between the head and the heart this year, but the heart is leading the way. And so, are you finding that you're going with your changes, John?
Yes. Yes, I mean, like I said, they're incremental, but they're definitely happening.
Yeah, and there's a real maturing happening this year too. You may have felt like you've grown up this year a lot. Yeah, there's been some harder lessons.
So like
this year.
Incremental and integration feels like what's happening right now. It's the best way I can describe it.
Good. So what you're saying is you can handle it.
Yeah.
Well, if you go with the changes as they happen.
Yeah.
you get, you build up and you go to the next level and the next level. And what I'm finding as well is so many people are now talking to each other, thanks to things like social media and like what we're doing now, which is really, again, this year I've found another increase in that happening. People are much more aware, and I think they're finding their voice a lot more, particularly more than they did last year as well.
Yeah.
Right.
And because of that, it also feels that things are happening faster for us because there's a greater collective that are more conscious. And it may be easy when you look at the news reports and whatnot to think that's not the case, but it is the case. We need to look away from that, more of that mainstream media, into like the individual, the independent media, things like what we're doing here. And you will see that voice and you will find a resonance with people like you.
Well, I'm going to ask you this because John was talking about, growth and, increments. But with Mercury, sometimes I feel that I agree that there's been growth, maturity, even, personally and through my business. But also with Mercury retrograde, there's also that force. It forces you to make those decisions where you're like, oh my God, am I ready for this?
Yeah.
Am I ready to make that decision?
Right.
But it's like, you have no choice. Is that something that you agree with?
Yeah, I agree. Go with the rush of energy and try. It's almost kind of like you're on a bit of a slipstream during a Mercury retrograde. And interesting you mentioned about business, because I find it's the best time of the year to overhaul your business.
That's what's happening
yeah,
now.
Well, you're right. It's a time of completion, finishing projects, cleaning house, getting things organized. Also, I just wanted to add one more thing. On a technical level, Mercury retrograde is a time when it's an optical illusion. So it's not actually moving backwards. It's appearing to move backwards. And the reason why is because it tends to be closer to the Earth. And so Mercury wants to be known, wants to be seen, and if you're not paying attention to what truth you're not telling or what you're not communicating or what you're not writing or what your soul isn't transmitting, then you have the frustrations. Then you have the phone falling into the toilet and things like that.
And sometimes the phone falling into the toilet can be a good thing. Maybe you needed a new phone.
And an upgrade a lot of times.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we have to have that sense of humor, I find, with a Mercury. Because if you don't laugh during a Mercury retrograde, you will throw something through the wall.
Right. Well, Mercury is the planet of children. It's the planet of childhood and play. It's the trickster. And so it wants you to not take things so seriously.
Well, that's what it sounded like when you said if you don't pay attention to it. It's like like a 2-year-old, like, hey, I'm here. I want my cookie.
So it grabs your attention. Absolutely. You can't not know when it's happening. And this year's, we're kind of lucky because we get four shots at this too. We get 4 shots of Mercury retrograde.
Right.
Some people go, oh no. But I say, oh yes, more opportunity.
And the year begins and ends with a Mercury retrograde. And
powerful.
It happens for us 3 to 4 times each year. And it's a 3-week period of time for those of you who don't know anything about it, just to kind of give you some perspective. And so this year is kind of special just because it's bookended.
Then you also
interesting openings and interesting closings.
Definitely. And we saw that with the very first part of the year. We lost some of our great artists, and right away in that time period. So
can we talk a little bit about the eclipse, because it seems like you were talking earlier about the eclipse energy. Can we revisit that a little bit?
Yeah, well, we just had one a day or so ago.
Yesterday.
The solar eclipse and the new moon.
Yesterday morning.
2 days for me.
I'm
ahead of you
that's
guys.
right.
So I call it a season when the eclipses happen, because I find the energy begins 2 weeks before the first eclipse.
I agree.
The period in between eclipses tends to be, I call it a doorway. Things become very intense every day. It's like every day something's happening to you, and you have to be alert and aware. There's opportunity to advance your life, to really accelerate your growth. And we're in that corridor now. We're in that doorway now, and that doorway closes at the end of the eclipse cycle. We have another eclipse in another 2 weeks
on the 16th.
At the full moon.
Right.
Another lunar eclipse, and then for 2 weeks after that, we're fixing up loose ends. We're tying up loose ends, and we're still, closing off business that was still open. So it's It's not just the event of the eclipse itself, but it's all the lead up and the period in between. But you'll find during the actual eclipse, you may be very, very, it's like you're in a vacuum. I know I do. I get my crown almost, it's like a rocket ship waiting to go off the top of my head. Kind of, it gets to an apex of energy. And after the eclipse, I feel amazing. It's almost like you've been through a sweat lodge or a cleanse, which is why I'm taking people through a vision quest this month, my tip-off subscribers, because this is the month to really find your answers and to really have a deep internal cleansing as well. I find eclipses help cleanse our life completely. It's kind of like when eclipses happen, it's like it's having that cupboard that you've got at home that you shovel your stuff in, and you just put it in and you close the door quickly, and then one day you open it and it all falls around, falls out around you. That's what the eclipse does if you're not ready for it.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a door you think you have out, and to clean it and decide if you really need.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Now, Tony's got somebody in the chat room that has a question for you.
Well, we have two people, but I want to ask the first one from Lily. Isn't that what's happening in bigger scale in the geopolitical arena right now with what's going on? Because it's getting crazy.
It's getting crazy.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
gotten
It must
big.
be for you guys in the US. What's it
Oh.
like? I mean, we get enough of it here on the media, but being in the middle of it, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty
Intensity.
crazy.
Yeah, it is.
It's a train wreck from the bowels of East Hale. Thank you, Retrograde.
I said a while ago about the election in the US, expect the unexpected. Even if whoever gets in, I feel there's going to be a change.
Once they're in?
Yeah.
You mean the way they lead, or?
It feels like they may not even see out their presidency.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
yeah.
That there'll be changes, so many changes.
I've been feeling that too. That whoever gets in, it's not gonna be
And
what we expect.
And there could still be somebody who goes whoop
Yep.
Yeah.
before November.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
Go Eddie.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's
Expect
lit.
the unexpected. I don't think we're gone are the days where it was,
Honest.
very,
Mm-hmm.
very, very, very mundane, and the same thing would happen year after year. We've changed too much as a society now.
Well, I'm gonna take that a little further then, because in the Mercury retrograde, shouldn't things come to the surface that need to come to the surface, especially in the political arena, that good or could end a candidacy? So
Absolutely, they can.
Yeah.
They can.
Any irregular thing, any bad thing, any quote cancerous type of thing in any movement's going to come up during the retrograde
Yeah.
and be exposed in a way that we wouldn't have seen it for the whole rest of the year.
I feel like in a lot of ways some of these cancerous elements have already shown up, and we saw that a lot during the Pluto-Uranus squares that have been going on since 2012. So I think if anything, we're going to get a revisiting of some of those truths that have been made evident to us, and that maybe we have ignored.
Yeah.
God, I love that. And so I also find that during a retrograde, everything gets kind of scrambled. And what I personally love about a retrograde is when I know the retrograde is coming, guess what? I get my ducks in a row, and my chickens, and my cows, and my goats. and then
Absolutely.
when it gets here, then I am not scrambled and scattered and foggy. I'm more focused and aligned and pure. So what is a suggestion you have for the listeners, Elizabeth, where during a retrograde, whether people believe in it or not, or know what it is or not, what's a great way for that you can help them stay aligned and grounded and balanced?
Okay, so I would say face everything that comes up every day. Don't leave it to one side. So if there's a pressing issue, face it, act on it immediately, because the opportunity is in the moment, and there will be many of them coming to you. And if you've left anything if you push something to the wayside, bring it forward and complete it. So often we have paperwork that we don't want to look at. Maybe there's things like taxes, and I'm not sure about your season in the US, but here in Australia, it's like a tax season at the moment. So look at those things. Look at things like your website. Look at the way you've worded things about yourself. Redo them. Look at any contracts and things like this. I always say to people, look, it's not that you can't sign during a Mercury retrograde, but if you want lots of change and flexibility going forward, it's perfect timing. And oftentimes, I've signed contracts many times during Mercury retrograde, and I found it was perfect because afterwards, if I wanted a change, it actually happened, where it occurred, and it was to my benefit to have signs during that period, because there was a change that was beneficial to me afterwards. I wasn't locked in. It wasn't sort of set in stone. So to keep yourself grounded, I would say face your challenges as they arise day to day. And you're going to feel amazing at the end of the day. You're going to feel like you've lived a whole month in one day, but your self-worth will grow because of it. You'll know how capable you are because of it.
And Elizabeth,
and that's the great grounding, our own capability.
I love what you said, because the image I got with it was during this particular retrograde, and I guess most of them too, but this one especially, I kept reading in what you were saying, the desire is more amplified up, and the resistance is a little bit lower. So it's the perfect time to act on the things that you really want to get into, whether it's losing weight, your desire is big, your resistance is low, etc. And I know Tony's got somebody else in the chat room here.
I do, and let's see if I can find it here. So we have, Alicia says, if you're taking questions, which we are, can you ask about if you're more affected in your ruling planet is Mercury? And if you can't answer that, maybe Rachel can.
Yeah, maybe Rachel, that's fine.
She's like, yeah, she's ready.
Yes, and yes. And especially if your ruling planet, for those of you who don't know much about astrology, every sign has a ruling planet, and your chart ruler is the first house, and that's kind of the ruler of your chart, simplifying this, of course. And if Mercury is your ruling planet, then Mercury plays a pretty big role in your life, and you're probably especially affected by the Mercury retrograde. So I think, what Elizabeth, what you offered for the what we can do during this time, and how to really make the most of this time, I think applies 10 times for anyone ruled by Mercury.
Wonderful. I find too that people tend to become a little bit more psychic during the Mercury retrograde, in that we anticipate what's going to happen next a lot more. We're closer to our natural abilities as well. And I've often heard that people who are ruled by Mercury find that increases tenfold during a retrograde as well. And they tend to love it, I find.
That's a really good point.
To.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I find a lot, like when we communicate in ways that are above. And we communicate psychically, and we communicate with spirit, and that's another form of a Mercury function.
I think so too. And if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I'm Eddie Connor.
I'm Tony Sweet.
I'm Rachel Lang.
And I'm John Twin.
And we have with us...
That's Mercury.
You hope?
John.
I'm Doug. Yeah.
I think that was more you than Mercury.
He's having an identity crisis.
Yeah, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to the beautiful Elizabeth Peru. She's a spiritual teacher and author, and we're going to take a quick commercial break for our Grown by Nature sponsors, and we'll be back in just a minute.
United States Pharmacopoeia, USP, sets the standard for most food supplements and are used in over 95% of all vitamin and mineral supplements in the world. The problem is that these products have never appeared in any living tissue. They're created in laboratories and are not recognizable to the body's metabolism. Grown by Nature products are different because they use renatured ingredients, proprietary blends of essential vitamins and minerals, with cofactors of proteins, lipids, and complex carbohydrates. Over 50 studies have been conducted on renatured nutrients, and over 20 have been published in peer-reviewed journals proclaiming their superiority. As a result, Grown by Nature vitamins and supplements are now recognized as simply the best available. Call 877-817-9829. That's 877-817-9829 and order your Grown by Nature products today. We are what we eat, and since we are of nature, we should eat foods in their natural form. Only Grown by Nature offers a full line of renatured nutrients. Call 877-817-9829. That's 877-817-9829, because not all products are grown by nature, but they should be.
You suffer from anxiety, from depression, maybe even chronic pain? Well, listen up. Truth Be Told is going to tell you about a breakthrough program built on over 100 years of therapies used in America's returning veterans to help you successfully overcome PTSD, anxiety attacks, pain, and depression. The secret proven in study after study. Music therapy. The effects of music are nothing short of amazing. From strokes to PTSD, music has been shown to improve the quality of life. Now, one of the latest music therapy programs being used in America's veteran hospitals can be yours to experience for free, at home, and to help your own anxiety attacks, pain, and depression. Or just relax after a hard day. It's called Whole Tones. It takes music therapy to a new level. This revolutionary program makes use of specifically designed frequencies that have been shown to stimulate your body's natural healing power down to a cellular level. If it works for battle-scarred vets, can it work for you? Well, experience it for yourself for free at sweetwholetones.com. Like Tony Sweet, that's SWEET. Go to sweetwholetones.com. Now enjoy the show.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I'm Eddie Connor.
I'm Tony Sweet.
I'm Rachel Lang.
And I'm JW.
That's much easier.
And if you're just tuning in, we're here with spiritual teacher and author, our very favorite, beautiful Australian friend, Elizabeth Peru. And we're going to throw it right back over to Tony because we have some people in the chat room that have some comments for Elizabeth.
Well, Matt in the chat room, he said, this show is slowly changing my life. He goes, I've listened to Truth Be Told with Elizabeth podcast on iHeartRadio at least 5 times. And so, Elizabeth, when you hear from people like that say that you're changing somebody's life, how does one keep the ego out and the spirit in so you can continue to change other people's lives around the world?
Easily.
For her, it's easily, and you can see
Easily,
it.
because just hearing that, and I hear that all the time, thanks to social media these days. You know, when I first started with my newsletter back in 2003, it was email, which was the way I got through to people. And you never got the feedback, really, unless somebody emailed you and it wasn't real time. And, you know, and since we've had things like Facebook and Twitter, it's just the feedback's real time and it comes to you instantly, and it just, your heart just opens up, and the head doesn't come into it. The ego doesn't come into it. It's just the heart says, oh, wonderful. Perhaps I've helped pierce another soul, help touch another soul. And that's what it's all about. So it's easy not to get into the ego. I mean, I've never been in it for that. For me, it's a passion to help empower people because I like to empower myself. And I've always said, you've got to do what you love for yourself first and foremost, and then it helps other people incredibly. But if you go into this type of work thinking you're just here to help other people, you won't have the consistency and the drive to follow through year after year. You've got to have a love that's coming from yourself and a drive and a passion. And so when I hear that, I get excited for the other people that are sparking off of my passion.
Elizabeth, if you were not doing what you're doing right now, what would you actually be doing?
Well, it's a good question. As we said a little earlier, before we were talking off camera, I've always loved dancing.
Yes.
And choreography and theatre, and I love theatre. And when I was a teenager, I thought I'd go into theatre, actually. And I often find sometimes the world of spirituality can be very theatrical. And in many ways, because it's like a performance. We're all leading a performance every day as well. We're all animating. We're all expressing ourselves. It's all about feeling and emotion as well. That's the area I would have loved to have gone into when I was younger, but I actually ended up going into, wait for it, accounting.
Sounds like Colby.
I know. I was just thinking that. Colby did too.
Yeah. So, which I'm glad for now because it helps me to be able to run a business and have a business mind as well as a creative one. But yeah, I went into that for many years, and I went into office work, and I worked in inventory management and all these types of, well, I think of quite boring and mundane things for me, who's a creative person, for many years. But that helped me too, because I decided I can't do that for the rest of my life. I'm not being of greatest advantage. And I really wanted to have meaning in my life. And I've always taught since the time I was little. I remember the first ever dance class I went to, my teacher took me aside and asked me to go through routines with other little kids. So that started after my first class. So I've always been naturally teaching and passing on information and knowledge. So I guess if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, I'd be teaching something else.
Well, you know, I think at the root of theater, at the root of acting, at the root of choreography and performances, there always comes a powerful intention. So I love the fact that choreographers can have the pictures in their mind and they sketch it out on paper, then they immediately manifest it in their body and perform it themselves and then teach it. And then we get to see these students and the other dancers reflect it back, and then we tweak it from there, and then we take that community of intentional beings of light, and then we put them over with the actors, then we put them over with the stage people, then we put them over with the curtains, then we put them with the wardrobe people, then we sell the tickets, then the community comes in, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. That intention grows like a boulder dropped in a pond and creates a tsunami. Okay, Elizabeth. But that's the feeling.
And people in theatre, I've had so much respect for them, because they put the complete self on the line every day.
Yes.
To be in live performance is one of the scariest things, and you have to, because you don't know what's going to happen, and everyone's waiting for you. The audience is there. It's like the most enlivening thing, and I love theatre for that. And I think they're the most spiritual people, the most soulful people, and like I said, I have the greatest respect for them.
Well, also so I studied acting for a number of years, and it requires so much presence.
Yes.
Just like, I think, Elizabeth, when I've watched your videos and when I hear you talking about your work, that's the word that comes up for me, for you. It's like you are present for the information, you're present in your body, and so I feel like the correlation there is, when you are completely present and you are putting everything on the line, then you can be of service to spirit too.
And then there's that authentic exchange, the authentic connection to source, and that's the best community building tool, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Elizabeth is so calm. That's one thing about we shared an Uber on the way back to our hotel one time, and it was just there's just such a peaceful, calm presence about her the entire. It's just. So put you at ease.
Pretty relaxed.
Yeah, put you at ease.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me ask you this then, Elizabeth. Here we go. So what, in any time in Mercury retrograde or any time, what gets you riled?
A spider. I'm joking.
It's been riled. Inequality.
Ooh, good answer.
No.
God, so Elizabeth, what is it that just makes me
Go ahead,
smash my phone? Not my iPhone, because I'm not stupid. My cheap little house phone. Whenever that happens, so obviously it's the Mercury. It's bringing up the injustices and all of that. I go nuts.
Yeah, same here. I can't stand injustice. To me, everyone's equal.
Yes.
Doesn't matter who you are. We're all equal. We're all amazing souls. We've all got amazing potential. And when I see inequality, and when I see particularly between sexes and between races, I think it's ridiculous.
Me too.
That's the one thing that fires me up, and has always fired me up ever since I was a little kid.
Do you think that if we had, which we will one day, because I'm a visionary, okay, do you think that if we all had the ability to sit still and see every life we've ever lived, every gender, every color, every culture, every country, every experience, every murder we committed, every time we got murdered, that people would get off their high horse just a little bit more and just sit back and drop back into their soul?
And I think a lot of what we do with our work is hopefully going towards that cause, that they recognize it before they go home, that they recognize it while they're here.
Yeah.
Because if you can get that while you're here in your human life, your evolution will expand like you have no idea. You may not need to keep coming back after cycle. If you can understand that cycle of life while you're here in your human life, it is everything.
Yeah.
But is that
it changes your life when you can do that.
Is that possible? Let's say that somebody comes to you, Elizabeth, or Eddie, or Rachel, to be able to sit down with them and focus on maybe not just a past life, but focus on those experiences of the past lives to realize what you have went through so you can understand others. Is that possible to do that with a spiritual teacher?
For compassion?
I'm sure you can do that with spiritual teachers, but I would say it's even simpler.
Oh, really?
In that all you've got to do is imagine you are that other person. I've been doing this since I was a little kid. My imagination goes off every day. And I've often sat back and I've imagined what it would be like to live as this person or that person. And I literally put myself in their body and feel their life. And when I do that, I realize that we can take whatever form we choose, and we have done. And if you can, the compassion rises in you so much when you can put yourself in someone else's body and imagine that you don't need to worry about your past lives. you focus on this one and you focus on the fact that we're all one soul here. We're all one soul. We're just having different forms of expression.
Yeah.
Awesome. Do you think there's a lot of intuitives in the room, and obviously that's your livelihood, and that's where you come from, your heart chakra. I believed, and this got triggered when you said my imagination fires off every day. Yeah. I think in order to be a really exceptional intuitive, you really should develop and cultivate your imagination, because without the imagination, you're not going to be as strong of a psychic, and without the intuition, with the imagination, you still have a little bit of a struggle. But when you marry those two together, it's like unconditional heaven on earth.
And that's the creative force.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes people get a little afraid that they're making things up, that it's their imagination, that it's not real. But, once you get past that fear and you realize that everything is made up, everything has to come from an idea and from our imagination. And what is the reality? And when we can smash those borders a little bit and realize that imagination is everything, it's what creates what happens to you, that you'll let yourself go. And I think that's when the intuition comes through more clearly, when we don't judge ourselves for our imagination. Because, great psychics and intuitives are very imaginative, very creative.
Well, then I'm going to ask you this, because we have a friend of ours, psychic, Colby Psychic Rebel. She's a psychic, and she was an accountant too. But when you say accountant and intuitive, a lot of times you don't think those two are the same, because most creative don't
sort of right brain and left brain.
Yeah. You don't.
Creative budgeting.
Yeah. So how does? I mean, I'm just curious, because I couldn't imagine even being an accountant. I'm not great with the numbers. So how does?
I like numbers though. Actually, I have this thing. I like calculators.
Oh, calculator, my friend.
I like adding numbers. And I've actually had a thing, and maybe Eddie, you've had this. I've never spoken to anyone that's ever had this happen to them before. Maybe there are people out there, but my whole life, and probably right now, even though I'm not conscious of it, but I'm counting.
Yes.
In the back of my mind, I'm in a sequence. And the sequence changes all the time. When I catch myself, it could be starting at 20, and it'll be 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, and then it goes back to 20. And this sequence is going round and round within me 24 hours a day. And it has been since I can remember.
It happens for me not in that way exactly, but I totally understand and identify with what you're talking about. Mine is whenever I'm doing anything creative or artistic, whenever I'm working on my fiction work or memoirs or whatever, I always assign the characters in my fiction books that I don't like, or rather that are the antagonists who are like really trying to get the goat of the protagonist. I always give them odd number birth dates, and they arrive at odd times and uneven times and stuff like that, or street names that sound like Booger Glob, Yugoslavia, instead of Swan Lake. You know what I mean? So I like the frequency of numbers and letters, and I'm always attuned to that in an interesting way. Now, Tony has someone who has a question here. Her name is Kathleen, and her question is for both of you ladies and Tony. I'm a Gemini, and I'm going to be signing papers for a prototype in a couple of days. Do you ladies think this is a good idea?
I say yes. Go for it. You have flexibility and change with whatever you create right now, and with the prototype, you probably want that.
And I would add to that if it's something that you've been thinking about for a long time, and you've been working on this for months or even for a few weeks prior to the retrograde, a lot of times you receive the papers to sign during a Mercury retrograde because it's completion. And so I'm a firm believer in finishing projects and closing on houses and buying new cars if you need one, and no matter what timing it is, there's a birth date to everything. And so that the moment you sign those papers is a sacred moment that we can't judge and say that this moment is better than that moment, or this moment is more effective than that moment. So yes, absolutely, go for it.
Yeah, and it's kind of what you do with the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, as it were.
Right, just like every single birth date, every single person coming into this earth has a birth date, and there are challenges and benefits and great things and harder things. So
yeah, and I don't get too hooked up on dates as well. If the opportunity presents itself, I'll go with it in the moment, and then I might look at what were the factors surrounding that on a planetary level.
Yeah.
But I think when the opportunity is there, take it.
Yeah, and I like the fact that they're a Gemini, that she's a Gemini, because I like the both sides of the fence piece of it, and the positive aspects.
Well, Elizabeth, do you have like a virtual vision quest coming up or something like that?
We do, yes. It's starting on Monday, and so what I'm going to be doing over 4 weeks is taking people through the process of a vision quest, which is the cleansing, the clearing, so that we can become vessels for our own answers. And then we'll actually be going on a vision quest. I'll be instructing people how to do that step by step over 4 weeks. So and this is for my people that come on board to the tip-off global energy forecast that I have. It's completely free and it's optional. But I thought it would be a wonderful way to use this energy of September, which is about, as we said, the health and the healing and re-establishing who we are. It's perfect timing because we're very able to let go of the past at the moment. So I'm excited for our first video. Comes out on Monday.
On Monday, we love that.
that's great.
And so after this, is there any other upcoming events like October, November that we can look forward to? And there's a lot of people, like I said, you're in Australia, that say, hey, I love her, but I can't go to Australia. So how can people get involved with your
Well, my forecast is for the world. And this is something I've always done. So as I said, I'm not an astrologer, so I don't use exact timings for things. My head actually doesn't work that way. I like to feel the energy. So I have a personal relationship with the planets, and then I tune into them every week. I know what alignments are happening, and I tune into it, and I ask, what does this mean for us on a global level? And then I write for the globe. So anyone, anywhere can read my forecasts, and it will be pertaining exactly to the day that they live in, whatever time zone they live in. And I've written like that for 13 years.
Wow, that's incredible. And they can obviously go to your website too and see the other things you have coming up.
elizabethperu.com, and they'll see the Tip-Off Global Energy Forecast. And they can have a read about it and come to my Facebook page, which is always a very active, wonderful community where there's a lot of information that I share every day as well, which is Elizabeth S. Peru.
Fantastic.
Well,
Thank you.
we love you. I mean,
I love you guys.
And just take the time and because I don't even know what time it is. Is it like early Saturday morning?
No, it's very respectable.
Oh, okay. Because if it was too early, I would have said
Probably
no.
about 9 a.m. or something Saturday morning here.
Oh, that's not
good.
bad.
That's it.
But we appreciate you taking the time and spending it with us. And I know, and I hope you will be back to be with us again. And especially the people that are experiencing Mercury retrograde, at least the term for the first time, that you've given them some tips to work with.
Embrace
and
it.
Embrace, yeah. So, but Elizabeth Peru, everybody.
Yay, Elizabeth. Thank you.
And we'll talk
Thank
to you
you.
soon, okay?
Yeah, love you guys.
I love you too.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. So what we're going to do is, like I said before we go, we have just a few minutes. I wanted to focus a little bit more on Rachel, too, because you have something that I think you're trying to get people to vote or something like that, Rachel?
To vote?
Yes. Oh, thanks, Tony. I forgot that I asked you. I told you about that.
I didn't forget.
So one of my goals as an astrologer is to bring astrology and spirituality into places where you wouldn't think they would go. And so I've actually submitted a panel to South by Southwest to speak. It's called When Worlds Collide, Astrology Meets Music. And I'm asking for votes. So if you
Great.
you can go on my Facebook page and find the link, or you can go on panelpicker.sxsw.com /vote. And my talk is When Worlds Collide. So thank you.
What is it again, that website?
It's
Facebook.
Yeah, you can go to my Facebook page, or you can go to panelpicker, PANELPICKER .sxsw.com.
All right, there. I think I found it. Is that it?
Thank you. Yes, that's it.
All right,
That's
so
it.
I'll put the link in there so people can see it.
Thank you. And When Worlds Collide.
I love it. When you said it, I'm like, I saw you actually, I think a couple days ago or yesterday. I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to
I have
do
2
this.
more days till the voting closes. So thank you everybody for voting and for your support.
And on Facebook.
Yep, on Facebook
So
too.
it's Rachel Lang on Facebook.
Yeah, actually, it's you can go to Rachel Lang 11. Facebook is Rachel Lang 11 or Blissin' Up.
Oh, look at
Yeah.
you.
And before we go, and something Elizabeth says, she looks at Mercury retrograde more through energetically, and yours is more through astrology.
Right.
So, when she says that, what is the difference? What do you think that means? The difference between energetically and then like just through planetary?
That's a great question. I
don't mean to throw you
yeah,
for a
no,
loop
no.
there.
I think when I'm looking at it from a more technical standpoint, and so I'm looking at the astrophysics of it, and I'm looking at the other things and other influences astrologically that are happening. It's a little bit more technical, but then my interpretation of it would be energetic. So I think what she said was a great point, which is everyone can personalize the planets. And so you don't have to know anything about astrology to feel the frequency and the vibration of Mercury and what that feels like and feel what it feels like for you. You don't have to know where it is in your chart. Does it help? Of course, absolutely, to know where it is in your chart. But I think they all have a resonance that we feel on a physical level. We feel it in our bones. And so taking the time to really meditate, to reflect, to spend some time thinking about what that is for you, anyone listening, is, I think, really a valuable tool.
Yeah, perfect.
I like that. That was such a good explanation.
That was. I didn't mean to throw you for
It
that,
is.
but it was actually really good. So-
Well, it was like the picture I got when you were saying it is there's 2 people standing, and they're standing beside of each other, and they're looking down in the valley of all the ridiculousness going on with this election right now in North America. And one is talking about how horrible everything is and the candidates are and how everybody's in an uproar and the whole country's segregated. And the other one is looking at it from a soul perspective and going, isn't this beautiful? Isn't it wonderful? Contrast in action and desires being birthed out of it. Wait till you see what happens next. And that's what
Ooh,
I
I
feel
love
like you
that.
just said.
Yeah,
And that's why people that listen get so inspired and learn, because you two are amazing.
Yeah.
So
I think everyone should rewind that and listen to what Eddie
I
just
know.
said, because
well, both.
this is where,
both.
I mean, he is the visionary. This is where we're moving, I think. Yeah.
All right, that's it
Yeah.
before it turns into a smoochy mess. All right, so we're going to get out of here. We're going to get out of here, but we want to thank you guys for tuning in. We want to thank Elizabeth Peru for joining us. Go to elizabethperu.com. Rachel, thank you so much for being a guest co-host.
Thank you.
But you guys stick around because we have another hour after this of another great guest that we are going to share with you guys. Eddie, always thank you.
You're so welcome.
You're welcome. John, the voice behind the mic.
JW.
JW.
Yeah.
I know, I was going to say that too.
I was going to say John.
Yeah.
All right, and please check us out on iTunes, on iHeartRadio,
Just
on
trying to
YouTube.
fool me on camera.
I know. Give them a smooch. But we're out of here. We'll see you in about 10 minutes. So stick around for another episode of Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I'm Tony Sweet.
I'm Eddie Connor.
I'm Rachel Lang.
John Williams.
I thought she was going to go, John. All right, we're. Hey, thank you for listening to Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie right here on Universal Broadcasting Network. Make sure you go to our iTunes page. Just type in Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. Listen to us on iHeartRadio. Again, Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. And go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, and please leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. So please support our sponsors and make sure you listen to us every Friday right here on Universal Broadcasting Network from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Until then, have a good week.